$106,000 blood money by Dashiell Hammett. Tum Caddy, he said, drawling the words. I nodded at the chair beside my desk and weighed him in while he moved to it. Tall, wide-shouldered, thick-chested, thin-bellied, he would add up to, say, 190 pounds. His swarthy face was hard as a fist, but there was nothing ill-humored in it. It was the face of a man of 40-something who lived life raw and thrived on it. His blue clothes were good, and he wore them well. In the chair, he twisted brown paper around a charge of Bull Durham and finished introducing himself. Impedi de Mix's brother. I thought maybe he was telling the truth. Paddy had been like this fellow in color and in manner. So that would make your real name Carrera, I suggested. Yes, he said as he was lighting his cigarette. Alfredo Estanislao Cristobal Carrera, if you want all the details. I asked him how to spell Estanislao, wrote the name down on a slip of paper, adding alias Tom Carey. I rang for Tommy Howd and told him to have the file clerk see if we had anything on him. While your people are opening graves, I will tell you why I am here, the swarthy man drawled through smoke when Tommy had gone away with the paper. Tough Paddy being knocked off like that, I said. He was too damn trusting to leave, his brother explained. This is the kind of hombre he was. The last time I saw him was 4 years ago, here in San Francisco. I'd come up from an expedition down to... well, never mind. Anyway, I was flat broke. Instead of pearls, all I got out of the trip was a bullet crease over my hip. Paddy was dirty with 15,000 or so he just nicked from somebody. The afternoon I saw him, he had a date, and he was leery of toting so much money too. So he gives me the 15,000 to hold for him until that night. Tom Carey blew out smoke and smiled softly past me at a memory. That's the kind of hombre he was, he went on. He trusted even his own brother. I went to Sacramento that afternoon and caught a train east. A girl in Pittsburgh got me spend the 15,000. Her name was Laurel. She liked dry whiskey with milk for a chaser. I used to drink it with her till I was all curdled inside, and I've never had any appetite for schmear case since. So there's $100,000 reward on this Papadopoulos, is there? And 6. Insurance companies put up 100,000, Bankers Association 5, and the city 1,000. Tom Carey chucked the remains of his cigarette into the cuspidor and began to assemble another one. Suppose I hand him to you, he asked. How many ways will the money have to go? None of it'll stop here, I assured him. The Continental Detective Agency doesn't touch reward money, and it won't let its hired men. But if any of the police are in on the pinch, they'll want to share. But if they aren't, it's all mine? Yeah, if you turn him in without help, or without any help except ours. I'll do that. The words were casual. So much for the arrest. Now for the conviction part. If you get them, are you sure you can nail him to the cross? Well, ought to be, but he'll have to go up against a jury, and that means anything can happen. Muscular brown hand holding the brown cigarette made a careless gesture. Then maybe I'd better get a confession out of him before I drag him in, he said offhand. I'd be safer that way, I agreed. You ought to let that holster down an inch or two, though. Brings the gun butt too high. Bulge shows when you sit down. You mean the one on the left shoulder? I took it away from a fellow after I lost mine. The strap's too short. I get another one this afternoon. Tommy came in with a folder labeled Carey Tom 1361-C. It held some newspaper clippings, the oldest dated 10 years back, the youngest 8 months. I read them through, passing each one to the swarthy man as I finished it. Tom Carey was written down in them as a soldier of fortune, gun runner, seal poacher, smuggler, and pirate. It was all alleged, supposed, and suspected. He'd been captured variously, but never convicted of anything. They don't treat me right, he complained placidly when we were through reading. For instance, stealing that Chinese gunboat wasn't my fault. I was forced to do it. I was the one that was double-crossed. After they got all this stuff on board, they wouldn't pay for it. I couldn't unload it. I couldn't do anything but take the gunboat and all. The insurance companies must want this Papadopoulos plenty to hang 100,000 on him. Cheap enough if it lands him, I said. Maybe he's not all the newspapers picture him as, but he's more than a handful. Gathered a whole damn army of strongmen here, took over a block in the center of the financial district, looted two of the biggest banks in the city, fought off the whole police department, made his getaway, ditched the army, used some of his lieutenants to bump off some more of them. That's where your brother Patty got his. Then, with the help of Porgy Reeve, Big Flora Brace, and Red O'Leary, he wiped out the rest of his lieutenants. And remember, these lieutenants weren't schoolboys. They were slick grifters like Blue Point Vance, and Shivering Kid, and Darby McLaughlin. Birds who knew what there was what. Carrie was unimpressed. But it was a bust just the same. You got all the loot back, and he just managed to get away himself. It was a bad break for him, I explained. Red O'Leary broke out with a complication of love and vanity. You can't chalk that against Papadopoulos. Don't get the idea he's half smart. He's dangerous, and I don't blame the insurance companies for thinking they'll sleep better if they're sure he's not out there or when he can frame some more tricks against their policy-holding banks. Don't know much about this Papadopoulos, do you? No, I told the truth, and nobody does. The 100,000 offer made rats out of half the crooks in the country. They're as hot after him as we are. Not only because of the reward, but because of his wholesale double-crossing. And they know just as little about him as we do. That he's had his fingers in a dozen or more jobs, that he was the brains behind Blue Point Vance's bond tricks, and that his enemies have a habit of dying young. That nobody knows where he came from or where he lives when he's home. Don't think I'm touting him as a Napoleon or a Sunday supplement mastermind, but he's a shifty, tricky old boy. As you say, I don't know much about him. There's lots of people I don't know much about. Tom Carey nodded to show he understood the last part and began making his third cigarette. I was in Nogales when Angel Grace Cardigan got word to me that Patty had been done in. He said, that was nearly a month ago. She seemed to think I'd ramp up here pronto, but it was no skin off my face. I let it sleep. But last week I read in a newspaper about all this reward money being posted on the hombres she blamed for Patty's rub-out. And that made it different. $100,000 different. So I shipped up here. I talked to her. And then I came in to make sure there'll be nothing between me and the blood money when I put up a loop on this pappy doodle. Angel Grace sent you to me? I inquired. Only she didn't know it. She dragged you into the story. She said you were a friend of Patty's, a good guy for a sloot, and hungry as hell for this papadoodle. So I thought you'd be a gent for me to see. When'd you leave Nogales? Tuesday, last week. That, I said, prodding my memory, was the day after Newhall was killed across the border. The swarthy man nodded. Nothing changed in his face. How far from the galleys was that, I asked. It was gone down near Oquintoa. That's somewhere around 60 miles southwest of Nogales. You interested? No, except I was wondering about your leaving the place when he was killed the day after he was killed. And you coming up here where he lived. Did you know him? He was pointed out to me in Nogales as a San Francisco millionaire going with the party to look at some mining property in Mexico. I was figuring on maybe selling him something later, but the Mexican patriots got him before I did. And so you came north? The hubbub kind of spoiled things for me. I had a nice little business in, call it supplies, to and fro across the line. This Newhall killing turned the spotlight on that part of the country. So I thought I'd come up here and collect that 100,000 and give things a chance to settle down there. Honest, brother, I haven't killed a millionaire in weeks, if that's what's worrying you. Well, that's good. Now, as I get it, you're counting on landing Papadopoulos. Angel Grace sent for you, thinking you'd run him down, just even up for Patty's killing. But it's the money you want. So you figure on playing me as well as Angel. That right? That's right. You know what'll happen if she learns that you're stringing her along with me. She had just a convulsion. Kind of balmy on the subject of keeping clear of the police, isn't she? She is. Somebody told her something about honor among thieves, and she's never gotten over it. Her brother's doing a hitch up north now. Johnny the plumber sold him out. Her man Patty was mowed down by his pals. Do either of those things wake her up? Not a chance. She'd rather have Papadopoulos go free than join forces with us. That's all right, Tom Carey assured me. She thinks I'm the loyal brother. Patty couldn't have told them much about me, and I'll handle her. You having her shadowed? I said yeah, ever since we turned her loose. She was picked up the same day as Flora and Porgy and Red and was grabbed. But we hadn't anything on her except that she had been Patty's lady love, so I had her sprung. How much dope did you get out of her? Descriptions of Papa Doodle and Nancy Regan, and that's all. She don't know any more about them than I do. Where does this Regan girl fit in? Hardly any, except that she might lead us to Papadopoulos. She was Red's girl. It was keeping a date with her that upset the game. When Papadopoulos wriggled out, he took the girl with him. I don't know why. She wasn't in on the stick-ups. Tom Carey finished making and lighting his fourth cigarette and stood up. Are we teamed? He asked as he picked up his hat. If you turn in Papadopoulos, I'll see you get every nickel you're entitled to, I replied. And I'll give you a clear field. I won't handicap you with too much of an attempt to keep my eyes on your actions. He said that was fair enough, told me he was stopping at a hotel in Ellis Street, and went away. Calling the late Taylor Newell's office on the phone, I was told that if I wanted any information about his affairs, I should try his country residence some miles south of San Francisco. I tried it. The ministerial voice that said it belonged to the butler told me that Newhall's attorney, Franklin Ellert, was the person I should see. I went over to Ellert's office. He was a nervous, irritable old man with a lisp and eyes that stuck out with blood pressure. Is there any reason, I asked point blank, for supposing that Newhall's murder was anything more than a Mexican bandit outburst? Is it likely he was killed purposely and not resisting capture? Lawyers don't like to be questioned. This one sputtered and made faces at me and let his eyes stick out a little further and, of course, didn't give me an answer. How, he snapped disagreeably. Explain your meaning, sir. He glared at me and then at his desk, pushing papers around with excited hands as if he was hunting for a police whistle. I told my story, told him about Tom Carey. Ellert spluttered some more demands. What the devil do you mean? And made a complete jumble of the papers on his desk. I don't mean anything, I growled back. I'm just telling you what I said. Yes, I know. He stopped glaring at me and his voice was less peevish. But there is absolutely nothing, no reason for suspecting anything of the sort. None of that at all, sir. None at all. Maybe you're right. I turned to the door, but I'll poke into it a little anyway. Wait, he scrambled out of his chair and ran around the desk to me. I think you're mistaken, but if you're going to investigate it, I would like to know what you discover. Perhaps you'd better charge me with your regular fee for whatever is done and keep me informed of your progress. That's satisfactory? I said it was, came back to his desk and began to question him. There was, as lawyers had said, nothing in Newhall's affairs to stir us up. The dead man was several times a millionaire with most of his money in mines. He had inherited nearly half his money. There was no shady practice, no claim jumping, no trickery in his past, no enemies. He was a widower with one daughter. She had everything she wanted while he lived, and she and her father had been very fond of one another. He'd gone to Mexico with a party of mining men from New York who expected to sell him some property there. They'd been attacked by bandits, had driven them off, but Newhall and a geologist named Parker had been killed during the fight. Back in the office, I wrote a telegram to our Los Angeles branch asking that an operative be sent to Nogales to pry into Newhall's killing and Tom Carey's affairs. The clerk whom I gave it to be coded and sent told me the old man wanted to see me. I went into his office and was introduced to a roly-poly man named Mr. Hook. Mr. Hook, the old man said, is the proprietor of a restaurant in Sausalito. Last Monday he employed a waitress named Nellie Riley. She told him she had come from Los Angeles. Her description, as Mr. Hook gives it, is quite similar to the description you and Cunningham have given of Nancy Regan, isn't it? He asked the fat man. Absolutely. It's exactly what I read in the papers. She's 5 feet 5 inches tall, about, and medium in size, and she's got blue eyes and brown hair, and she's around 21 or 22, and she's got looks. And the thing that counts the most is she's a high-hat as the devil. She don't think nothing's too good for her. Why, when I tried to be a little sociable, she told me to keep my dirty paws to myself. And then I found out she didn't know hardly nothing about Los Angeles, though she claimed to have lived there 2 or 3 years. I bet you she's the girl, all right. And he went on talking about how much reward money you ought to get. Are you going back there now? I asked him. Pretty soon. I've got to stop and see about some dishes. Then I'm going back. This girl will be working? Yes. All right, we'll send a man over with you, one who knows Nancy Regan. I called Jack Cunningham in from the operative's room and introduced him to Hook. They arranged to meet in half an hour at the ferry, and Hook wadded out. This is Nellie Riley. It won't be Nancy Regan, I said, but we can't afford to pass up even 100 to 1 chance. I told Jack and the old man about Tom Carey and my visit to Ellert's office. The old man listened with his usual polite attentiveness. Young Cunningham, only 4 months in the manhunting business, listened with wide eyes. You better run along now and meet Hook, I said, when I had finished, leaving the old man's office with Jack. And if she should be Nancy Regan, grab her and hang on. We were out of the old man's hearing, so I added, for God's sake, don't let your youthful gallantry lead you to a poke in the jaw this time. Pretend you're grown up. The boy blushed and said, go to hell, adjusted his necktie and set off to meet Hook. I had some reports to write. After I'd finished them, I put my feet on my desk, made cavities in a package of Fatimas, and thought about Tom Carey until 6 o'clock. Then I went down to the States for my abalone chowder and minute steak and home to change clothes before going out to Seacliff to sit in at a poker game. The telephone interrupted my dressing. Jack Cunningham was on the other end. I'm in Sausalito. The girl wasn't Nancy, but I got a hold of something else. I'm not sure how to handle it. Can you come over? Is it important enough to cut a poker game for? Yes, it is. I think it's big. I was excited. I wish you'd come over. I really think it's a lead. Where are you? At the ferry there. Not the Golden Gate, the other. Oh, all right. I'll catch the first boat. An hour later, I walked off the boat in Sausalito. Jack Cunningham pushed through the crowd and began talking. Coming down here on my way back. Hold it until we get out of the mob, I advised him. Must be tremendous. The eastern point of your collar is bent. Mechanically repaired this defect in his otherwise immaculate costuming while we walked into the street, but he was too intent on whatever was on his mind to smile. Up this way, he said, guiding me around a corner. Hook's lunchroom is on the corner. You can take a look at the girl if you like. She's the same size and complexion as Nancy Regan, but that's all. She's a tough little job who probably was fired for dropping her chewing gum in the soup in the last place she worked. Oh, all right, that lets her out. Now, what's on your mind? Well, after I saw her, I started back to the ferry, and a boat came in while I was still a couple of blocks away. 2 men who must have come in on it came up the street. They were Greeks, rather young, tough, though ordinarily I shouldn't have paid much attention to them. But since Papadopoulos is a Greek, and we have an intense interest in him, of course, I looked at these chaps. They were arguing about something as they walked, and not talking loud, but scowling at one another. And as they passed me, the chap on the gutter side said to the other, I'll tell him it's been 29 days. 29 days. I counted back, and it's just 29 days since we started hunting for Papadopoulos. He is a Greek, and these chaps were Greek. And when I'd finished counting, I turned around and began to follow them. They took me all the way through the town and up a hill on the fringe. They were at a little cottage. Couldn't have been more than 3 rooms, set back in a clearing in the woods by itself. There was a for sale sign on it, with no curtains in the windows and no sign of occupancy. But on the ground beside the back door there was a wet place, as if a bucket or pan of water had been thrown out. I stayed in the bushes until it got a little darker. Then I went closer and I could hear people inside, but I couldn't see anything through the windows. I boarded up. And after a while, the 2 chaps I'd followed came out, saying something in a language I couldn't understand, whoever was in the cottage. The cottage door stayed open until the 2 men had gone out of sight down the path, so I couldn't have followed them without being seen by whoever was at the door. Then the door was closed, and I could hear people moving around inside, or perhaps only one person, and I could smell cooking, and some smoke came out of the chimney. I waited and waited, but nothing more happened. I thought I'd better get in touch with you. That sounds interesting, I agreed. We were passing under a street light. Jack stopped me with a hand on my arm and fished something out of his overcoat pocket. Look, he held it out to me. A charred piece of blue cloth. Could have been the remains of a woman's hat that had been there 3/4 burned. I looked at it under the street light, and then I used my flashlight to look at it more closely. I picked it up behind the cottage while I was nosing around, Jack said, and Nancy Reagan wore a hat of that shade on the night she and Papadopoulos vanished, I finished for him. Okay, on to the cottage. We left the streetlights behind, climbed a hill, dipped down into a little valley, turned into a winding sandy path, left that to cut across sod between trees and a dirt road, trod half a mile of that, and then Jack led the way along a narrow path that wound through a black tangle of bushes and small trees. I hoped he knew where he was going. Almost there, he whispered to me. A man jumped out of the bushes and took me by the neck. My hands were in my overcoat pockets. One was holding the flashlight and the other my gun. I pushed the muzzle of the pocketed gun towards the man and pulled the trigger. The shot ruined $75 worth of overcoat for me, but it took the man away from my neck. I was lucky. Another man was on my back. I tried to twist away from him and didn't altogether make it. Felt the edge of a knife along my spine. I wasn't so lucky, but it was better than getting the point. I butted back at his face, missed, kept twisting, squirming while I brought my hands out of my pockets and clawed at him. The blade of his knife came flat against my cheek. I caught the hand that held it and let myself go down backwards under him. He said, ugh, rolled over, got my hands and knees on the ground, was grazed by a fist, scrambled up. Fingers dragged at my ankle. My behavior was ungentlemanly. I kicked the fingers away, found the man's body, kicked it twice hard. Jack's voice whispered my name, and I couldn't see him in the blackness, nor could I see the man I had shot. All right here, I told Jack. How'd you come out? Top hole. Is that all of it? I don't know, but I'm going to risk a peek at what I've got. Tilting my flashlight down at the man under my foot, I snapped it on. Thin blonde man, his face blood-smeared, his pink eyes rimmed, jerking as he tried to play possum in the glare. Come out of it, I ordered. A heavy gun went off back in the bush, another lighter one. The bullets ripped through the foliage. I switched off the light, bent the man to the ground, knocked him on the top of the head with my gun. Crouch down low, I whispered to Jack. The smaller gun snapped again twice. It was ahead to the left. I put my mouth to Jack's ear. We're going to go to that damn cottage whether anybody likes it or no. Keep low and don't do any shooting unless you can see what you're shooting at. Go ahead. Bending as close to the ground as I could, I followed Jack up the path. The position stretched a slash in my back, a scalding pain from between my shoulders almost to the waist. I could feel blood trickling down over my hips, or thought I could. The going was too dark for stealthiness. Things crackled under our feet, rustled against our shoulders. Our friends in the bush used their guns. Luckily, the sounds of twigs breaking and leaves rustling and the pitch blackness isn't the best of targets. Bullets zipped here and there, but we didn't stop any of them. Neither did we shoot back. We halted where the end of the bush left the night a weaker gray. That's it, Jack said about the square shape ahead. On the jump, I grunted and lit out for the dark cottage. Jack's long, slim legs kept him easily at my side as we raced across the clearing. A man's shape oozed from behind the blot of the building, and his gun began to blink at us. Shots came so close together that they sounded like one long stuttering bang. I pulled the youngster with me when I flopped flat to the ground, except where a ragged-edged empty tin can held up my face. From the other side of the building, another gun coughed. From a tree stem to the right, third. Jack and I began to burn powder back at them. The bullet kicked my mouth full of dirt and pebbles. I spit in mud and cautioned to Jack, "You're shooting too high. Hold it low and pull easy." A hump showed in the house's dark profile. I sent a bullet at it. Man's voice yelled, "Ow!" And then lower but very bitter, "Oh, damn you, damn you." For a warm couple of seconds, bullets slattered all around us. Then there was not a sound to spoil the night's quietness. When the silence had lasted 5 minutes, I got myself up on hands and knees and began to move forward, Jack following. The ground wasn't made for that sort of work. 10 feet of it was enough. We stood up and walked the rest of the way to the building. "Wait," I whispered, and leaving Jack at one corner of the building, I circled it, seeing nobody, hearing nothing but the sounds I made. We tried the front door. It was locked but rickety. Bumping it open with my shoulder, I went indoors, flashlight and gun in my fists. Shack was empty. Nobody. No furnishings. No trace of either in the 2 bare rooms. Nothing but bare wooden walls, bare floor, bare ceiling with a stovepipe connected to nothing through it. Jack and I stood in the middle of the floor, looked at the emptiness, and cursed the dump from back door to front for being empty. We hadn't quite finished when feet sounded outside. White light beamed in the open doorway, and a cracked voice said, "Hey, you can come out one at a time. Kinda easy like." "Who says so?" I asked, snapping off the flashlight, moving over to close to a side wall. "A whole god-darned flock of deputy sheriffs," the voice answered. "Couldn't you push one of them in and let us get a look at him?" I asked. "I've been choked and carved and shot at tonight until I haven't got much faith left in anybody's word." A lanky, knock-kneed man with a thin, leathery face appeared in the doorway, showed me a buzzer, fished out my credentials, and the other deputies came in. There were 3 of them in all. "We were driving down the road, bound for a little job near the point when we heard the shooting," the lanky one explained. "What's up?" I told him. "Shack's been empty a long time," he said, when I had finished. "Anybody could have camped in it easy enough. Think it was at Papadopoulos, huh? Well, we'll kind of look around for him and his friends, especially since there's that nice reward money." We searched the woods and found nobody. The man I'd knocked down and the man I had shot were both gone. Jack and I rode back to Sausalito with the deputies. I hunted up a doctor there and had my back bandaged. He said the cut was long but shallow. Then we returned to San Francisco and separated in the direction of our homes, and thus ended the day's doings. Here's something that happened the next morning. I didn't see it. I heard about it a little before noon and read about it in the papers that afternoon. I didn't know it then that I had a personal interest in it, but later I did. So I'll put it in here where it happened. At 10 o'clock that morning, into a busy market street staggered a man who was naked from the top of his battered head to the soles of his blood-stained feet. From his bare chest and sides and back, little ribbons of flesh hung down, dripping blood. His left arm was broken in 2 places. The left side of his bald head was smashed in. An hour later, he died in the emergency hospital without having said a word to anyone, the same vacant, distant look in his eyes. Police easily ran back the trail, dropped blood drops. They ended with a red smear in an alley beside a small hotel just off Market Street. In the hotel, the police found the room from which the man had jumped, fallen, or been thrown. The bed was soggy with blood. On it were torn and twisted sheets that had been knotted and used for rope. There was also a towel that had been used for a gag. The evidence read that the naked man had been gagged, trussed up, and worked on with a knife. The doctor said the ribbons of flesh had been cut loose, not torn or clawed. After the night user had gone away, the naked man had worked free of his bonds and, probably crazed by pain, had either jumped or fallen out of the window. Fall had crushed his skull and broken his arm, but he'd managed to walk a block and a half. The hotel management said the man had been there 2 days. He was registered at H.F. Barrows from the city. He had a black Gladstone bag in which, besides clothes, shaving implements, and so on, police found a box of 38 cartridges, a black-handled kerchief with eye holes cut in it, 4 skeleton keys, a small jimmy, and a quantity of morphine with a needle, and the rest of the kit. Elsewhere in the room, they found the rest of his clothes, a .38 revolver, and 2 quarts of liquor. They didn't find a cent. The supposition was that Barrows had been a burglar and that he'd been tied up, tortured, and robbed, probably by pals, between 8 and 9 that morning. Nobody knew anything about him. Nobody had seen his visitor or visitors. The room next to his, on the left, was unoccupied. The occupant of the room on the other side had left for work in a furniture factory before 7 o'clock. While this was happening, I was at the office, sitting forward in my chair to spare my back, reading reports, all of which told how operatives attached to various Continental Detective Agency branches had continued to fail to turn up any indication of the past, present, or future whereabouts of Papadopoulos and Nancy Regan. There was nothing novel about these reports. I've been reading similar ones for 3 weeks. The old man and I went out to lunch together, and I told him about the previous night's adventures in Sausalito while we ate. His grandfatherly face was as attentive as always, and his smile as politely interested. But I was half through with my story. He turned his mild blue eyes from my face to his salad, and he stared at his salad until I had finished talking. And then, still not looking up, he said he was sorry I'd been cut. I thanked him and waited a little while. Finally, he looked at me. Mildness and courtesy he habitually wore over his cold-bloodedness were in his face and eyes and voice as he said, "This first indication that Papadopoulos is still alive came immediately after Tom Carey's arrival." It was my turn to shift my eyes. I looked at the roll I was breaking while I said, "Yeah?" That afternoon, a phone call came in from a woman out in the Mission who'd seen some highly mysterious happenings and was sure they had something to do with the well-advertised bank robberies. So I went out to see her and spent most of the afternoon learning that half of her happenings were imaginary and the other half were the efforts of a jealous wife to get the lowdown on her husband. It was nearly 6 o'clock when I returned to the agency. A few minutes later, Dick Foley called me on the phone. His teeth were chattering, so I could hardly get the words. "What?" I asked, and he said the same thing again or worse. But by this time, I'd guessed that he was asking me if I could get down to the Harbor Hospital. I told him I could in 10 minutes. With the help of a taxi, I did. A little Canadian operative met me at the hospital door. His clothes and hair were dripping wet, but he had a shot of whiskey and his teeth stopped chattering. "Damn fool jumped in the bay," he barked as if it was my fault. "Angel Grace? Who else was I shadowing? Got on the Oakland ferry, moved off by myself by the rail. I thought she was going to throw something over. I kept an eye on her. Bingo, she jumped." Dick sneezed. "I was goofy enough to jump in after her. I held her up. We were fished out. "In there," he said, nodding his wet head towards the interior of the hospital. "What happened before she took to the ferry?" "Nothing. Been enjoying all day, straight out to the ferry." "How about yesterday?" "Apartment all day. Out at night with man, roadhouse, home at 4. Bad break, I couldn't tail him off." "What did he look like?" The man Dick described was Tom Carey. "Good," I said. "You better be at home for a hot bath and some dry rags. I wanted to see the near suicide." She was lying on her back on a cot, staring at the ceiling. Her face was pale, but it always was, and her green eyes were no more sullen than usual, except that her short hair was dark with dampness. She didn't look as if anything out of the ordinary had happened. "You think of the funniest things to do," I said when I was beside the bed. She jumped up, her face jerked around, startled, and she recognized me and smiled. A smile that brought into her face the attractiveness that habitual sullenness kept out. "You have to keep in practice sneaking up on people?" she asked. "Who told you I was here?" "Everybody knows that your picture's all over the front pages of the newspaper with your life history and what you said to the Prince of Wales." She stopped smiling and looked steadily at me. "I got it," she exclaimed after a few seconds. "That run who came in after me was one of your ops tailing me, wasn't he?" I didn't know anybody had to go in after you, I answered. I thought you came ashore after you'd finished your swim. Didn't you want to land? She wouldn't smile. Her eyes began to look at something horrible. Oh, why didn't they leave me alone? She wailed, shuddering. It's a rotten thing, living. I sat down on a small chair beside the white bed and patted the lump her shoulders made in the sheets. What was it? I was surprised at the fatherly tone I achieved. What'd you want to die for, Angel? Words that wanted to be said were shining in her eyes, tugging at the muscles of her face, shaped at her lips. But that was all. The words she said came out listlessly, with a reluctant sort of finality. They were, no, you're the law. I'm a thief. I'm staying on my side of the fence. Nobody can say, all right, I surrendered, but for God's sake, don't make me listen to another one of those ethical arguments. Is there anything I can do for you? Thanks, no. There's nothing you want to tell me? She shook her head. You all right now? Yes. I was being shadowed, wasn't I? Or you wouldn't have known about it so soon. I'm a detective. I know everything. Be a good girl. From the hospital, I went up to the Hall of Justice to the Police Detective Bureau. Lieutenant Duff was holding down the captain's desk. Told him about Angel's dive. Got any idea what she was up to? He wanted to know when I had finished. She's too far off center to figure. I want her vagged. Yeah? I thought you wanted her loose so you could catch her. Yeah, that's about played out by now. I'd like to try throwing her in the can for 30 days. Big Flora's in waiting trial, and Angel knows Flora was one of the troop that rubbed out her Patty. Maybe Flora don't know that of Angel. Let's see what will come of mixing the two babies for a month. Well, can do, Duff agreed. This Angel's got no visible means of support, and it's a cinch she's got no business running around jumping in people's bays. I'll put the word through. In the Hall of Justice, I went up to Ellis Street Hotel, at which Tom Carey had told me he was registered. He was out. I left word I would be back in an hour and use that hour to eat. When I returned to the hotel, this tall, swarthy man was sitting in the lobby. He took me up to his room, set out gin, orange juice, and cigars. Seen Angel Grace? I asked. Yes, last night we did the dumps. Seen her today? No. She jumped in the bay this afternoon. The hell she did. He smiled, moderately surprised. And then? She was fished out. She's okay. Shadow in his eyes could have been some slight disappointment. Hey, she's a funny sort of kid, he remarked. I wouldn't say Patty didn't show good taste when he picked her, but she's a queer one. How's the Papadopoulos hunt progressing? It is, but you oughtn't to have split on your word. You halfway promised you wouldn't have me shadowed. I'm not the big boss, I apologize. Sometimes what I want don't fit in what the head man wants. It shouldn't bother you much. You can shake him, can't you? Uh-huh. That's what I've been doing. But it's a damn nuisance jumping in and out of taxis and back doors. We talked and drank a few minutes longer, and then I left Carrie's room and hotel, and I went to the drugstore telephone booth where I called Dick Foley's home and gave Dick the swarthy man's description and address. I don't want you to tail Carrie, Dick. I want you to find out who's trying to tail him, and that shadower is the bird you to stick to. The morning time will be enough to get started, so get yourself dried out. And that was the end of that day. I woke to a disagreeable rainy morning. Maybe it was the weather, maybe I'd been too frisky the day before. Anyway, the slit in my back was like a foot-long boil. I phoned Dr. Canova, who lived on the floor below me, and had him look at the cut before he left for his downtown office. He rebandaged it and told me to take life easy for a couple of days. It felt better after he had fooled with it. But I phoned the agency and told the old man that unless something exciting broke, I was going to stay on sick call all day. I spent the day propped up in front of the gas log, reading and smoking cigarettes that wouldn't burn right on account of the weather. That night I used the phone to organize a poker game in which I got very little action one way or the other. In the end, I was $15 ahead, which was just about $5 less than enough to pay for the booze my guests had drunk on me. And my back was better the following day, and so I went in. I was down at the agency, and there was a memorandum on my desk saying Duff had phoned that Angel Grace Cardigan had been vagged. 30 days in the city prison. It was a familiar pile of reports from various branches on their operatives' inability to pick up anything on Papadopoulos and Nancy Reagan. I was running through these when Dick Foley came in. "Made 'em," he reported. 30 or 32, 5'6", 130, sandy hair, complexion, blue eyes, thin face, scum skin off, rat. Lives in a dump on 7th Street. What'd he do? Tailed Carey 1 block. Carey shook him. Hunted for Carey till 2 in the morning. Didn't find him. Went home. Take him again? Go up to his flop house and find out who he is. The little Canadian was gone half an hour. "Sam Arley," he said when he returned. "Been there 6 months. Supposed to be a barber. When he worked, if ever." I got 2 guesses about this Arley, I told Dick. First is that he's the gink who carved me in Sausalito the other night. Second is that something's going to happen to him. It was against Dick's rules to waste words, so he said nothing. I called Tom Clancy's hotel, and I got the swarthy man on the wire. "Come over," I invited him. "I got some news for you." "As soon as I'm dressed and breakfast," he's promised. "When Carey leaves here, you to go along behind him," I told Dick after I hung up. "If Arley connects with him now, maybe there'll be something doing. Try to see it." Then I phoned the detective bureau and made a day with Sergeant Hunt of his Angel Grace's Cardigan's apartment. After that, I busied myself with paperwork until Tommy came in to announce the swarthy man from Nogales. The job he was tailing you, I informed him. When he sat down and began working on a cigarette, as a barber named Arley, and I told him where Arley lived. "Yes, if slim-faced sandy lad." I gave him the description Dick had given me. "That's the hombre," Tom Carey said. "Know anything else about him?" "No." "You had Angel Grace bagged." It was neither an accusation nor a question, so I didn't answer it. "It's just as well," the tall man went on. "I'd have had to send her away. She was bound to gum up things with her foolishness when I got ready to swing the loop." "That'll be soon?" "That all depends on how it happens." He stood up, yawned, shook his wide shoulders. "But nobody would starve to death if they decided not to eat any more till I got him. I oughtn't to have accused you of having me shadowed." It didn't spoil my day. Tom Carey said, "So long," and sauntered out. I rode down to the Hall of Justice, picked up Hunt. We went over to the Bush Street apartment house in which Angel Grace Cardigan had lived. The manager, a highly scented fat woman with a hard mouth and soft eyes, already knew her tenant was in the cooler. She willingly took us up to the girls' room. The Angel wasn't a good housekeeper. Things were clean enough, but upset. The kitchen sink was full of dirty dishes. The folding bed was worse than loosely made up. Clothes and odds and ends of feminine equipment hung over everything from bathroom to kitchen. We got rid of the landlady and raked the place over thoroughly. Came away knowing all there was to know about the girl's wardrobe and a lot about her personal habits. Didn't find anything pointing to Papadopoulos. No word came in on the Carey-Arley combination that afternoon or evening, though I expected to hear from Dick every minute. At 3 o'clock in the morning, my bedside phone took my ear out of the pillow. A voice came over the wire. It was the Canadian ops. "Exit Arley," he said. "R.I.P.? "Yep." "How?" "Lead." "Our lads?" "Yep." "Keep till morning?" "Yep." "See you at the office." And I went back to sleep. When I arrived at the agency at 9 o'clock, one of the clerks had just finished decoding a night letter from the Los Angeles operative who had been sent to Nogales. It was a long telegram and meaty. It said that Tom Carey was well known along the border. For some 6 months he'd been engaged in the over-the-line traffic, guns going south, booze and probably dope, and immigrants coming north. Just before leaving there the previous week, he'd made inquiries concerning one Hank Barrows. This Hank Barrows description fit the H.F. Barrows who had been cut into ribbons and fallen out of the hotel room window and died. Los Angeles operative hadn't been able to get much of a line on Barrows, except that he hailed from San Francisco, had been on the border only a few days, and had apparently returned to San Francisco. The operative had turned up nothing new on the Newhall killing. The sign still read that he had been killed resisting capture by Mexican patriots. Dick Foley came into my office while I was reading the news, and when I had finished, he gave me his contribution to the history of Tom Carey. "Tell them out of here. To hotel, Harley on corner. 8 o'clock, carry out, garage, hire car without driver, back hotel, checked out, 2 bags, out through the park. Ollie after him in a flivver. My boat after Ollie. Down the boulevard, off crossroad, dark, lonely. Ollie steps on gas, closes in, bang. Carrie stops, 2 guns going, exit Ollie. Carrie back to the city, hotel marquees, registers George F. Danby, San Diego, room 622. Did Tom frisk Arlie after he dropped him? No, he didn't touch him. So take Mickey Linehan with you and don't let Carrie out of your sight. I'll get somebody up to relieve you and Mickey late tonight if I can, but he's got to be shadowed 24 hours a day until... I didn't know what came after, so I just stopped talking. I took Dick's story into the old man's office and told him, winding up. Arlie shot first, according to Foley, so Carrie gets self-defense on it. But we're getting action at last, and I don't want to do anything to slow it up. So I'd like to keep what we know about this shooting quiet for a couple of days. Won't increase our friendship with any of the county sheriffs if they find out what we're doing, but I think it's worth it. If you wish, the old man agreed, reaching for his ringing phone. He spoke into the instrument and passed it on to me. Detective Sergeant Hunt was talking. Floor brace and Grace cardigan crushed out just before daylight. The chances are I wasn't in the humor for details. A clean sneak, I asked. Not a lead on him so far, but I'll get the details when I see you, thanks. And I hung up. Angel Grace and Big Flora have escaped from the city prison. I passed the news on to the old man. He smiled courteously as if it's something that didn't especially concern him. You were congratulating yourself on getting action, he murmured. I turned my scowl to a grin. Mumbled, well, maybe. Went back to my office. Telephoned Frank Ellert. Lisping attorney said he'd be glad to see me, so I went over to his office. And now, what progress have you made? He asked eagerly when I was seated beside him. Some. A man named Barrows was also in Nogales when Newhall was killed and also came up to San Francisco right after. Carrie followed Barrows up here. Did you read about the man found walking the streets naked, all cut up? Yes. Well, that was Barrows. Then another man comes into the game, a barber named Arlie, spying on Carrie. Last night in a lonely road south of here, Arlie shot at Carrie and Carrie killed him. The older lawyer's eyes came out another inch. What road? He gasped. You want the exact location? Yes. Pulled his phone out, recalled the agency, had Dick's report read to me, and gave the attorney the information he wanted. It had an effect on him. He hopped out of his chair. Sweat was shining along the rigid wrinkles made in his face. Miss Newhall is down there alone. That place is only half a mile from our house. I frowned and beat my brains together, but I couldn't make anything out of it. Suppose I put a man down there to look after her, I suggested. Excellent. His worried face cleared until there weren't more than 50 or 60 wrinkles in it. She would prefer to stay there during the first grief over her father's death. You will then send a capable man? Rock of Gibraltar is a leaf in the breeze beside him. Give me a note to take down. Andrew McElroy is his name. While the lawyer scribbled a note, I used his phone again to call the agency to tell the operator to get hold of Andy, tell him I wanted him. I ate lunch before I returned to the agency. Andy was waiting when I got there. Andy McElroy was a big boulder of a man, not very tall, but thick and hard of head and body. Glum, grim man, with no more imagination than an adding machine. I'm not even sure he could read. But I was sure that when Andy told something to do, he did it, and nothing else. And he didn't know enough not to. I gave him the lawyer's note to Miss Newhall, told him where to go and what to do, and Miss Newhall's troubles were off my mind. 3 times that afternoon, I heard from Dick Foley and Mickey Linehan. Tom Carey wasn't doing anything very exciting, though he had bought 2 boxes of 44 cartridges at a Market Street sporting goods establishment. The afternoon papers carried photographs of Big Flora Brace and Angel Grace Cardigan with the story of their escape. The story was as far from the probable facts as newspaper stories generally are. On another page was an account of the discovery of the dead barber in the lonely road. He'd been shot in the head and in the chest 4 times in all. County officials' opinion was that he'd been killed resisting a stick-up and that the bandits had fled without robbing him. 5 o'clock, Tommy Howard came to my door. "That guy Carey wants to see you again," freckle-faced boy said. "Shoot him in." Swarthy man sauntered in, said howdy, and sat down, made a brown cigarette. "Got anything special on for tonight?" he asked when he was smoking. "Nothing I can't put aside for something better. Giving a party?" "Uh-huh. I had thought of it. A kind of surprise party for Papa Doodle. Do you want to come along?" It was my turn to say, "Uh-huh." "I'll pick you up at 11. Van nice and geary," he drawled. "But this has got to be a kind of tight party, just you and me and him." "No, there's one more will have to be in on it. I'll bring him along." "I don't like that." Tom Carey shook his head slowly, frowning amiably over his cigarette. "You sleuths oughtn't to outnumber me. It ought to be 1-1. "You won't be outnumbered," I explained. "This job I'm bringing won't be on my side more than yours. It'll pay you to keep as sharp an eye on him as I do, and to see they don't get behind either of us if we can help it." "Then why do you want to lug him along for?" "Wheels within wheels," I grinned. Swarthy man frowned less amiably now. "The 106,000 reward money, I'm not figuring on sharing that with anybody." "Right enough," I agreed. "Nobody I bring along will declare themselves on it." "I'll take your word for it." He stood up. "And we've got to watch this hombre, huh? If we want everything to go all right. Suppose he gets in the way, cuts up on us. Can we put it into him, or do we just say naughty, naughty? He'll have to take his own chances." "Fair enough." His hard face was good-natured again, and he moved towards the door. 11 o'clock at Van Ness and Geary. I went back into the operative's room where Jack Cunningham was slumped down in a chair reading a magazine. "I hope you've thought of something for me to do," he greeted me. "I'm getting bed sores from sitting around." Patience, son, patience. That's what you gotta learn if you're gonna be a detective. Well, when I was a child your age, just starting with the agency, I was lucky to... "Oh, don't start with that," he begged, and his good-looking young face got earnest. "I don't see why you keep me cooped up here. I'm the only one besides you who really got a good look at Nancy Regan. I should think you would have me out hunting for her." "Oh, I told the old man the same thing," I sympathized. "He's afraid to risk something happening to you. He says in all his 50 years of gumshoeing, he's never seen such a handsome op. Besides being an old-fashioned plate and a social butterfly and an heir to millions, his idea is we've got to keep you as sort of a showpiece and not let you..." "Oh, go to hell," Jack said, all red in the face. "But I persuaded him to let me take the cotton packing off you tonight," I continued. "So meet me at Van Ness and Geary before 11 o'clock. "Action?" He was all eagerness. "Maybe." "What are we going to do?" "I'll bring your little pop gun along." An idea came into my head, and I worded it. "You better get all dressed up. Evening duds." "Dinner coat?" "No, the limit. Everything but the high hat. Now, for your behavior, you're not supposed to be an op. I'm not sure what you're supposed to be, but it doesn't make any difference. Tom Carey will be along. You'll act as if you were neither my friend nor his, as if you didn't trust either of us. We'll be cagey with you. If anything's asked that you don't know the answer to, you fall back on hostility. But don't crowd Carey too far, you got it?" I think so," he spoke slowly, screwing up his forehead. "I'm to act as if I was going along on the same business as you, but that outside of that we weren't friends. And if I wasn't willing to trust you, that it?" "Very much. Watch yourself. You'd be swimming in nitroglycerin all the way." "What's up? Be a good chap and give me some idea." I grinned at him. He was a lot taller than I was. "I could," I admitted, "but I'm afraid it would scare you off, so I'd better tell you nothing. Be happy while you can. Eat a good dinner. Lots of condemned folks seem to eat a hearty breakfast of ham and eggs just before they parade out to the rope. Maybe you wouldn't want them for dinner, but..." At 5 minutes to 11 that night, Tom Carey brought a black touring car to the corner where Jack and I stood waiting in a fog that was like a damp fur coat. "Climb in," he ordered as he came to the curb. I opened the front door and motioned Jack in. He rang up the curtain on this little act, looking coldly at me, and opened the rear door. I'm going to sit back here, he said bluntly. Not a bad idea, and I climbed in beside him. Carrie twisted around in his seat, and he and Jack stared at each other for a while. I said nothing. I didn't introduce him. When the swarthy man had finished sizing the youngster up, he looked from the boy's collar and tie, all of his evening clothes not hidden by his overcoat, and to me grinned and drawled, "Your friend's a waiter, huh?" I laughed because the indignation that darkened the boy's face and popped his mouth open was natural, not part of his acting. Pushed my foot against his, and he closed his mouth and said nothing, looked at Tom Carey and me as if we were specimens of some lower form of animal life. I grinned back at Carey and asked, "Are we waiting for anything?" He said we weren't, left off staring at Jack, put the machine in motion, drove us out through the park, down the boulevard. Traffic going our way, and the other loomed out, faded into the fog-thick night. Presently, we left the city behind and ran out in the fog into clear moonlight. I didn't look at any of the machines running behind us, but I knew that one of them, Dick Foley and Mickey Linehan, should be riding. Tom Casey swung our car off the boulevard into a road that was smooth and well-made, but not much traveled. "Wasn't a man killed down here somewhere last night?" I asked. Carey nodded his head without turning it. When we had gone another quarter mile, he said, "Right here." We rode a little slower now, and Carey turned off his lights. In the road that was half moon silver, half shadow gray, the machine barely crept along for perhaps a mile. We stopped in the shade of tall shrubs that darkened a spot in the road. "All ashore that's going ashore," Tom Carey said, and got out of the car. Jack and I followed him. Carey took off his overcoat and threw it into the machine. "The place is just around the bend back from the road," he told us. "Damn this moon, I was counting on fog." I said nothing, nor did Jack. The boy's face was white and excited. "We'll beeline it," Carey said, leading the way across the road to a high-wire fence. He went over the fence first, and Jack, and then the sound of someone coming along the road from ahead stopped me, signaling silence to the two men on the other side of the fence. I made myself small behind a bush. The coming steps were quick, light, feminine. A girl came into the moonlight just ahead. She was a girl of 20-something, neither tall nor short, thin nor plump. She was short-skirted, bare-haired, sweatered. Terror was in her white face, in her carriage of her hurrying figure. But something else was there, too, more beauty than a middle-aged sleuth was used to seeing. When she saw Carey's automobile bulking in the shadow, she stopped abruptly with a gasp that was almost a cry. I walked forward, saying, "Hello, Nancy Regan." At the time, the gasp was a cry. Oh! And then, unless the moonlight was playing tricks, she recognized me, and terror began to go away from her. She put both hands out to me with relief in the gesture. "Well," a bearish grumble came from a big boulder of a man who had appeared out of the darkness behind her. "What's all this?" "Hey, Andy," I greeted the boulder. "Oh, hello," McElroy echoed and stood still. Andy always did what he was told to do. He'd been told to take care of Miss Newhall. I looked at the girl and then at him again. "Is this Miss Newhall?" I asked. "Yeah," he rumbled. "I came down here like you said, but she told me she didn't want me, wouldn't let me in the house. But you hadn't said anything about coming back, so I just camped outside, moseying around, keep my eye on things. And then I seen her shinnying out a window a little while ago, and I just went on along behind her to take care of her like you said I was to do." Tom Carey and Jack Cunningham came back to the road, crossed it to us. Swarthy man, an automatic in one hand. The girl's eyes were glued on mine. She paid no attention to the others. "What's this all about?" I asked her. "I don't know," she babbled, her hands holding onto mine. Her face was close to mine. "Yes, I'm Ann Newhall. I didn't know. I thought it was fun, and then I found out it wasn't. I couldn't get out of it." Tom Carey grunted and stirred impatiently. Jack Cunningham was staring down the road. Andy McElroy stood stolid on the road, waiting to be told what to do next. The girl never once looked from me to any of the others. "How'd you get in with them?" I demanded. "Talk fast." I had told the girl to talk fast, and she did. For 20 minutes, she stood there and turned out words in a chattering stream at no breaks, except where I cut in to keep her from straying from the path, and not always plausible. But the notion stayed with me throughout, that she was trying to tell the truth most of the time. And not for a fraction of a second did she turn her gaze from my eyes. It was as if she was afraid to look anywhere else. This millionaire's daughter had, 2 months before, gone of a party of 4 young people returning late at night from some sort of social affair down the coast. Somebody suggested they stop at a roadhouse along their way, a particularly tough joint. Its toughness was its attraction, of course. Toughness was more or less of a novelty to them. They got a first-hand view of it that night, for nobody knew just how they found themselves taking part in a row before they had been 10 minutes in the dump. Girls escort had shamed her by showing an unreasonable amount of cowardice. He had let Red O'Leary turn him over his knee and spank him, done nothing about it afterwards. The other youth in the party had been not much braver. The girl, insulted by this meekness, had walked across to the red-haired giant who had wrecked her escort, and she had spoken to him loud enough for everybody to hear. "Will you please take me home?" Red O'Leary was glad to do it. She left him a block or 2 from her house. She told him her name was Nancy Regan. He probably doubted it, but he never asked her any questions, pried into her affairs in spite of the difference in their worlds. Genuine companionship had grown up between them. She liked him. He was so gloriously a roughneck that she saw him as a romantic figure. He was in love with her, knew she was miles above him, and so she had no trouble making him behave so far as she was concerned. They met often. He took her to all the rowdy holes in the Bay District, introduced her to yeggs, gunmen, swindlers, told her wide tales of criminal adventuring. She knew he was a crook, knew he was tied up in the Siemens National and Golden Gate Trust jobs when they broke, but she saw it all as sort of a theatrical spectacle. She didn't see it for what it was. She woke up the night they were in Leroy's and were jumped by crooks that Red and El Papadopoulos and the others double-cross. It was too late then for her to wriggle clear. She was blown along with Red to Papadopoulos' hangout after I shot the big lad. She saw then what her romantic figures really were, what she had mixed herself up with. When Papadopoulos escaped, taking her with him, she was a wide-awake, cured through forever with her dangerous trifling with outlaws. So she thought. She thought Papadopoulos was a little scary old man he seemed to be, Flora's slave, a harmless old duffer too near the grave to have any evil in him. He had been whining and terrified. He begged her not to forsake him, pleading with her. Tears ran down his withered cheeks, begging her to hide him from Flora. She took him to their country house and let him fool around the garden, safe from prying eyes. She had no idea he had known who she was all along and had guided her into suggesting this arrangement. Even when the newspapers said he had been the commander-in-chief of the Thug Army, when the $106,000 reward was offered for his arrest, she believed in his innocence. He convinced her that Flora and Red had simply put the blame on him for the whole thing so they could get off with lighter sentences. He was such a frightened old gink. Who wouldn't have believed him? Then her father's death in Mexico had come, and grief had occupied her mind with the exclusion of most other things until this day, when Big Flora and another girl, probably Angel Grace Cardigan, had come to the house. She had been deathly afraid of Big Flora when she had seen her before, and she was more afraid now. She soon learned that Papadopoulos was not Flora's slave, but her master. She saw the old buzzard as he really was, but that wasn't the end of her awakening. Angel Grace had suddenly tried to kill Papadopoulos. Flora had overpowered her. Grace, defiant, had told him she was Patty's girl. Then she had screamed at Ann Newall, "And you damn fool, you don't know they killed your father? Don't you know?" Big Flora's fingers around Angel Grace's throat stopped her words. Flora tied up the angel and turned to the Newhall girl. "You're in it," she said brusquely. "You're in it up to your neck. You'll play along with us or else. Here's how it stands, dearie. The old man and I are both due to step off if we're caught, and you'll do the dance with us. I'll see to that. Do what you're told. We'll all come through all right. Get funny and I'll beat the holy hell out of you." The girl didn't remember much after that. She had dim recollections of going to the door and telling Andy she didn't want his services. She did this mechanically, not even needing to be prompted by the big blonde woman who stood close behind her. Later in the same fearful days, she had gone out her bedroom window, down the vine-covered side of the porch and away from the house, running along the road, not going anywhere, just escaping. That was what I learned from the girl. She didn't tell me all of it. She told me very little of it in those words. But that's the story I got by combining her words, her manner of telling them, and her facial expressions with what I already knew and what I could guess. And not once while she talked had her eyes turned from mine. Not once had she shown that she knew there were other men standing in the road with us. She stared into my face with a desperate fixity, as if she was afraid not to, and her hands held mine as if she might sink through the ground if she let go. "How about your servants?" I asked. "There aren't any there now." "Papadopoulos persuaded you to get rid of them?" "Yes, several days ago." "And then Papadopoulos, Flora, and Angel Grace are alone in the house now?" "Yes." "They know you ducked?" "I don't know. I don't think so. I'd been in my room some time. I don't think they suspected I dared do anything but what they told me." It annoyed me to find I was staring into the girl's eyes as fixedly as she was into mine, and that when I wanted to take my gaze away, it wasn't easily done. Jerked my eyes away from her, took my hands away. "The rest of you can tell me later," I growled and turned to give Andy McElroy his orders. "You stay here with Miss Newell until we get back from the house. Make yourself comfortable in the car." The girl put her hand on my arm. Are you? "I'm going to turn you over to the police." "Yes," I assured her. No. "Don't be childish," I begged. "You can't run around with a mob of cutthroats, get yourself tied up in a flock of crimes, and then when you're tripped, say, 'Excuse it, please,' and go free. If you tell the whole story in court, including the parts you haven't told me, the chances are you'll get off. But there's no way in God's world for you to escape arrest. Come on," I told Jack and Tom Carey. "We got to shake it up if we want to find our folks at home." Looking back as I climbed the fence, I saw that Andy had put the girl in the car and was getting in himself. "Just a moment," I called to Jack and Carey while we were starting across the field. "Thought of something else to kill time," the swarthy man complained. I went back across the road to the car and spoke quickly and softly to Andy. "Dick Foley and Mickey Linehan should be hanging around the neighborhood. As soon as we're out of sight, hunt them up, turn Miss Newhall over to Dick. Tell him to take her with him and beat it for a phone. Rouse the sheriff. Tell Dickies to turn the girl over to the sheriff to hold for the San Francisco police. Tell him he's not to give her up to anybody else, not even to me. You got it?" "Got it." "All right. After you've told him that and you've given him the girl, then you bring Mickey Linehan to the Newell house as fast as you can make it. We'll likely need all the help we can get as soon as we can get it." "Got you," Andy said. "What are you up to?" Tom Carey asked suspiciously when I enjoyed Jack and him. "Detective business." "I ought to have come down and done the trick all by myself," he grumbled. "You haven't done a damn thing but waste time since we started." "I'm not the one that's wasting it now." He snorted and set out across the field again, Jack and I following him. At the end of the field, there was another fence to be climbed. Then we came over a wooded ridge, and the Newhall house lay before us, a large white house glistening in the moonlight, with yellow rectangles where blinds were down over the windows of the lighted rooms. Lighted rooms were on the ground floor. The upper floor was dark. Everything was quiet. "Damn the moonlight," Tom Carey repeated, bringing another automatic out of his clothes so he now had one in each hand. Jack started to take his gun out, looked at me, saw I was letting mine rest, and let his slide back in his pocket. Tom Carey's face was a dark stone mask, slits for eyes, slits for mouth, a grim mask of a man-hunter, man-killer. He was breathing softly, his big chest moving gently. Besides him, Jack Cunningham looked like an excited schoolboy. His face was ghastly, his eyes all stretched out of shape, and he was breathing like a tire pump, but his grin was genuine for all the nervousness in it. "We'll cross the house on this side," I whispered. "Then one of us can take the front, one the back, and the other can wait until he sees where he's needed, right?" "Right," the swarthy one agreed. "Wait," Jack exclaimed. "The girl came down from the vines from the upper window. What's the matter with my going up that way? I'm lighter than either of you. If they haven't missed her, the window would still be open. Give me 10 minutes to find the window, get through it, and get myself placed. Then when you attack, I'll be there behind him. How's that?" He demanded applause. "What if they grab you as soon as you light?" I objected. "Suppose they do. I can make enough racket for you to hear. You can gallop the attack while they're busy with me. That'll be just as good. Blue hell, Tom Carey barked. What good is all that? The other way is best. One of us at the front door, one at the back. Kick him in and go in shooting. If this new one works, it'll be better, I gave my opinion. If you want to jump in the furnace, Jack, I won't stop you. I won't cheat you out of your heroics. No, the swarthy man snarled. Nothing doing. Yes, I contradicted him. We'll try it. Better take 20 minutes, Jack. That won't give you much time to waste. He looked at his watch, and I at mine. He turned towards the house. Tom Carey, scowling darkly, stood in his way. I cursed and got between the swarthy man and the boy. Jack went around my back and hurried away across the too bright space between us and the house. Keep your feet on the ground, I told Carey. There's a lot of things to this game you don't know anything about. Too damn many, he snarled, but he let the boy go. There was no open second-story window on our side of the building. Jack rounded the rear of the house and went out of sight. Faint rustling sounded behind us. Carey and I spun together. His guns went up, and I stretched out an arm across them, pushing him down. Don't have a hemorrhage, I cautioned him. This is just another thing you don't know about. The rustling had stopped. All right, I called softly. Mickey Linehan and Andy McElroy came out of the tree shadows. Tom Carey stuck his face so close to mine that I'd been scratched if he had forgotten to shave that day. You double-crossing? Behave, a man of your age, I admonished him. None of these boys want any of your blood money. I don't like this gang stuff, he snarled. We're going to need all the help we can get, I interrupted, looking at my watch. I told the two operatives we're going to close in on that house now. 4 of us ought to be able to wrap it up snug. You know Papadopoulos, Big Flora, and Angel Grace by description. They're in there. Don't take any chances with them. Flora and Papadopoulos are dynamite. Jack Cunningham is trying to ease inside now. You two look after the back of the joint. Carey and I will take the front. We'll make the play. See that nobody leaks out on us. Forward march. Swarthy men and I headed for the front porch, a wide porch grown over with vines on the side, yellowly illuminated now by the light that came in through the 4-curtained French windows. We hadn't taken our first steps across the porch when one of these tall windows moved, opened. First thing I saw was Jack Cunningham's back. He was pushing the casement open with a hand and foot, not turning his head. Beyond the boy facing him across the brightly lighted room stood a man and woman. The man was old, small, scrawny, wrinkled, pitifully frightened. Papadopoulos. I saw he had shaved off his straggly white mustache. The woman was tall, full-bodied, pink-fleshed, and yellow-haired. A she-athlete of 40 with clear gray eyes, deep-set in a handsome, brutal face. Big Flora Brace. They stood very still, side by side, watching the muzzle of Jack Cunningham's gun. While I stood in front of the window looking at the scene, Tom Carey, his 2 guns up, stepped past me, going through the tall window to the boy's side. I did not follow him into the room. Papadopoulos' scary brown eyes darted to the swarthy man's face. Flora's gray ones moved there deliberately and then looked past him to me. Hold it, everybody, I ordered, and moved away from the window to lean to the side of the porch where the vines were thinnest. Leaning out between the vines so my face was clear in the moonlight, I looked down the side of the building. Shadow in the shadow of the garage could have been a man. I put an arm out in the moonlight and beckoned. Shadow came towards me. Mickey Linehan. Andy McElroy's head peeped around the back of the house. I beckoned again. He followed Mickey. I returned to the open window. Papadopoulos and Flora, a rabbit and a lioness, stood looking at the guns of Carey and Jack. They looked at me when I appeared, and a smile began to curve on the woman's full lips. Mickey and Andy came up and stood beside me, and the woman's smile died grimly. Carey, I said, you and Jack stay as is. Mickey, Andy, go in and take hold of our gifts from God. When the 2 operatives stepped through the windows, things happened. Papadopoulos screamed. Big Flora lunged against him, knocking him at the back door. Go, go, she roared. Stumbling, staggering, he scrambled across the room. Flora had a pair of guns sprung suddenly into her hands. Her big body seemed to fill the room as if by willpower. She had become a giantess. She charged straight at the guns Jack and Carey held, blotting the back door of the fleeing man from their fire. The blur to one side was Andy McElroy moving. I had a hand on Jack's gun arm. "Don't shoot," I muttered in his ear. Flora's guns thundered together, but she was tumbling. Andy had crashed into her, had thrown himself at her legs as a man would throw a boulder. When Flora tumbled, Tom Carey stopped waiting. His first bullet was sent so close past her that it clipped her curled yellow hair. But it went past, called Papadopoulos just as he went through the door, and the bullet took him low in the back, smeared him out on the floor. Carey fired again into the prone body. "It's no use," I growled. "You can't make him any deader." He chuckled and lowered his guns. "Fall into 106. All his ill humor, his grimness was gone. "That's $26,500 each for those slugs was worth to me." Andy and Mickey had wrestled Flora into submission and were hauling her up from the floor. I looked from them back to the swarthy man, muttering, "It's not all over yet." "No?" He seemed surprised. "What's next?" "Stay awake and let your conscience guide you," I replied, and turned to the Cunningham youngster. "Come along, Jack." I led the way out through the window and across the porch where I leaned against the railing. Jack followed and stood in front of me, his gun still in his hand, his face white and tired from nervous tension. Looking over his shoulder, I could see the room we had just quit. Andy and Mickey had Flora sitting between them on the sofa. Carrie stood a little to one side, looking curiously at Jack and me. We were in the middle of the band of light that came through the open window. We could see inside, except that Jack's back was that way and could be seen from there. But our talk couldn't be overheard unless I made it loud. All that was as I wanted it. "Now tell me about it," I ordered Jack. "Well, I found the open window," the boy began. "I know all that part. I cut in. You came in, you told your friends Papadopoulos and Flora about the girl's escape and that Carrie and I were coming. You advised them to make out you had captured them single-handedly, that you would draw Carrie and me in. With you unsuspected behind us, it'd be easy for the three of you to grab the two of us. After that, you could stroll down the road and tell Andy I'd sent you for the girl. It was a good scheme, except you didn't know I had Dick and Mickey up my sleeve. Didn't know I wouldn't let you get behind me. But all that isn't what I want to know. I want to know why you sold us out. What you think you're going to do now." "Are you crazy?" His young face was bewildered, his young eyes horrified. "Or is this some—" "Sure I'm crazy," I confessed. "Wasn't I crazy enough to let you lead me into a trap in Sausalito? But I wasn't too crazy to figure it out afterwards. I wasn't too crazy to see that Ann Newhall was afraid to look at you. I'm not crazy enough to think you could have captured Papadopoulos and Flora unless they'd wanted you to. I'm crazy, but in moderation." Jack laughed, a reckless young laugh, but too shrill. His eyes didn't laugh with a mouth and voice. While he was laughing, his eyes looked from me to the gun in his hand and back to me. "Talk, Jack," I pleaded huskily, putting a hand on his shoulder. "For God's sakes, why'd you do it?" The boy shut his eyes, gulped, and his shoulders twitched. When his eyes opened, they were hard and glittering and full of merry hell. "The worst part of it," he said harshly, moving his shoulder from under my hand, "is that I wasn't a very good crook, was I? I didn't succeed in deluding you." I said nothing. "I suppose you've earned your right to the story," he went on after a little pause. His voice was consciously monotonous, as if he were deliberately keeping out of it every tone or accent that might seem to express emotion. He was too young to talk naturally. "I met Ann Newhall 3 weeks ago in my own home. She had gone to school with my sisters, though I had never met her before. We knew each other at once, of course. I knew she was Nancy Regan. She knew I was a Continental operative. So we went off by ourselves and talked things over, and she took me to see Papadopoulos. I liked the old boy, and he liked me. He showed me how good we could be together to accumulate unheard piles of wealth. So there you are. Prospect of all that money completely devastated my morals. I told him about Carrie as soon as I had heard from you, and I led you into the trap, as you say. He thought it would be better if you stopped bothering us before you found the connection between Newhall and Papadopoulos. After that failure, he wanted me to try again, but I refused to have a hand in any more fiascos. There's nothing sillier than a murder that doesn't come off. Ann Newhall is quite innocent of everything except folly. I don't think she has the slightest suspicion that I have any part in the dirty work beyond refraining from having everybody arrested. And my dear Sherlock about concludes the confession. I listened to the boy's story with a great show of sympathetic attentiveness. Now I scowled at him and spoke accusingly, but still not without friendliness. Stop spoofing. The money Papadopoulos showed you didn't buy you. You met the girl and you were too soft to turn her in. But your vanity, your pride, and looking at yourself as a pretty cold proposition wouldn't let you admit it even to yourself. You had to have a hard-boiled front, so you were meat to Papadopoulos' grinder. He gave you a part you could play yourself. Super gentleman crook, a mastermind, a desperate suave villain, all that kind of romantic garbage. That's the way you went, my son. You went as far as possible beyond what was needed to save the girl from the hoosgow, just to show the world, but chiefly yourself, that you were not acting through sentimentality, but according to your own reckless desires. And there you are. Look at yourself. Whatever he saw in himself, what I had seen or something else, his face slowly reddened, and he wouldn't look at me. He looked past me at the distant road. I looked into the lighted room beyond him. Tom Carey had advanced to the center of the floor where he stood watching us. I jerked a corner of my mouth at him, a warning. Well, the boy began again, but he didn't know what to say after that. He shuffled his feet and kept his eyes on my face. I stood up straight and got rid of the last trace of my hypocritical sympathy. Give me a gun, you lousy rat, I snarled at him. He jumped back as if I had hit him. Craziness riled in his face. He jerked his gun chest high. Tom Carey saw the gun go up. The swarthy man fired twice, and Jack Cunningham was dead at my feet. Mickey Linehan fired once, and Carey was down on the floor, bleeding from his temple. I stepped over Jack's body, went into the room, knelt beside the swarthy man. He squirmed, tried to say something, died before he could get it out. I waited until my face was straight before I stood up. Big Flora was studying me with narrow, great eyes. I stared back at her. I don't get it at all yet, she said slowly. But if you... Where's Angel Grace? I interrupted. Tied to the kitchen table, she informed me, and went on with her thinking aloud. You've dealt a hand that... Yeah, I said sourly, I'm another Papadopoulos. Her big body suddenly quivered. Pain clouded her handsome, brutal face. 2 tears came out of her lower eyelids. I'll be damned if she didn't love the old scoundrel. It was after 8 in the morning when I got back to the city. I ate breakfast and went up to the agency where I found the old man going through his morning mail. That's all over, I told him. Papadopoulos knew Nancy Regan was Taylor Newell's heiress. When he needed a hiding place after the bank job flopped, he got her to take him down to the new old country place. He had 2 holes on her. She pitied him as a misused old duffer, and she was, even if innocently, an accomplice after the fact in the stick-up. Pretty soon Papa Newell had to go to Mexico on business, and Papadopoulos saw a chance to make something. If Newell was knocked off, the girl would have millions, and the old thief knew he could take them away from her. He sent Barrows down to the border to buy the murder from some Mexican bandits. Barrows put it over, but he talked too much. He told a girl in Nogales that he had to go back to Frisco to collect plenty from an old Greek, and then he'd return and buy her the world. The girl passed the news on to Tom Carey. Carey put a lot of 2s together and got at least a dozen for an answer. Followed Barrows up here. Angel Grace was with him the morning he called on Barrows here to find out if his old Greek really was Papadopoulos and where he could be found. Barrows was too full of morphine to listen to reason. He was so dope-deadened that even after the dark man began to reason with a knife blade, he had to whittle Barrows all up before he began to feel hurt. Carving sickened Angel Grace. She left after vainly trying to stop Carey. And when she read in the new afternoon papers what a finished job he had made of it, she tried to commit suicide to stop the images from crawling around her head. Carey got all the information Barrows had, but Barrows didn't know where Papadopoulos was hiding. Papadopoulos learned of Carey's arrival. You know how he learned? He sent Arlie to stop Carey. Carey wouldn't give the barber a chance until the swarthy man began to suspect Papadopoulos might be at the Newell place. He drove down there, letting Arlie follow. As soon as Arlie discovered his destination, Arlie closed in, hell-bent on stopping Carrie at any cost. That was what Carrie wanted. He gunned Arlie, came back to town, got a hold of me, and took me down there to help him wind things up. Meanwhile, Angel Grace in the cooler had made friends with Big Flora. She knew Flora, but Flora didn't know her. Papadopoulos had arranged a crush out for Flora. It's always easier for two to escape than one, and Flora took Angel along, took her to Papadopoulos. Angel went for him, but Flora knocked her for a loop. Flora, Angel Grace, and Ann Newhall, alias Nancy Regan, were all in the county jail. I wound up. Papadopoulos, Tom Carey, and Jack Cunningham are dead. I stopped talking and lighted a cigarette, taking my time, watching the cigarette and match carefully throughout the operation. The old man picked up a letter, put it down without reading it, picked up another. They were killed in course of making the arrests. His mild voice held nothing but its usual unfathomable politeness. Yeah, Carey killed Papadopoulos. A little later he shot Jack. Mickey not knowing anything except that the dark man was shooting at Jack and me. We were standing apart talking. Shot and killed Carey. The words twisted around on my tongue and wouldn't come out straight. Neither Mickey or Andy know that Jack... Nobody but you and I know exactly what Jack was doing. Flora Brace and Ann Newhall did know, but if we say that he was acting on orders all the time, nobody can deny it. The old man nodded his grandfatherly face and smiled, but for the first time in the years I'd known him, I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking that if Jack had come through alive, we would have had the nasty choice between letting him go free or giving the agency a black eye by advertising the fact that one of our operatives was a crook. I threw away my cigarette and stood up. The old man stood also. He held out his hand to me. "Thank you," he said. I took his hand. I understood him, but I didn't have anything I wanted to confess, even by silence. It happened that way, I said deliberately. I played the cards so we would get the benefit of the breaks, but it just happened that way. He nodded, smiling benignantly. "I want to take a couple of weeks off," I said from the door. I felt tired, washed out. The end.